What's up everybody, David Rodriguez here, and in today's video we're going to be going over injuries. And we're going to be talking about some guidelines that seem to really help expedite the recovery process and that people have seemed to do that really gets them back on track on their journey to getting where they were before and even better than they were before. Now, obviously I'll preface this, I'm not a PT, I'm not a doctor, I cannot specifically diagnose anything that has gone wrong with you. So, without further ado, after you've gone to see a doctor or a PT that can actually tell you what's wrong with you, and so now you know your limitations, the things you can still do, I'm a huge proponent, and people also seem to be a big proponent of this idea of that movement is medicine. Now, what does that mean? It means that even with an injured body part, that still means that you can still work out, or at least you can still do some kind of physical activity that would be beneficial towards you, for you, whether it be walking on a treadmill or doing exercises that don't necessarily have to incorporate the injured body part. For example, if your elbow is injured, right, you still have one good elbow to work out with. You can still do some curls, you can still do some one-arm pull rows, you can still do some one-arm squats or kettlebell squats. You can do one-arm hinges, right? So just because a body part's injured doesn't mean that you should just completely not train all the other ones. And that's kind of that kind of happens to some people. They kind of get into that mindset that oh, well, one body part's injured, so why would I bother training the rest of it? Same thing with your legs, right? So if someone's knee is messed up to where they can't bend it, then they kind of just end up nixing any kind of lower body weight exercises in general, which instead, so let's look at what you can do, right? So you can't bend the knee, but if it doesn't hurt to kind of have your hinge movements, right, and come up and down, then instead of doing squats, let's maybe focus on getting better technique with good mornings or with straight-legged deadlifts and other hinge patterns instead of just completely getting rid of the lower body workout in general. So now, but why would we even want to continue moving if we can't really focus on the injured part wherever it may be? Well, in response to exercise, your body does multiple things, but one of the things it does is that it increases your heart rate, and an increase in heart rate means an increase in blood flow. Now, yes, obviously you kind of get a localized pump from the blood rushing to that specific area, but it doesn't mean that the whole rest of your body isn't getting blood flow. The increased heart rate and the increased blood flow is going to be beneficial for that injured body part, because as that blood is traveling through those joints and through those muscles, it's transporting all the oxygen, all the nutrients, taking all the bad stuff, all the scar tissue, all the broken bones and the chips, breaking that down, reabsorbing them into your bloodstream so that way you can rebuild and make a stronger muscle, tendon, ligament, whatever, or at least getting it back to functioning. So, faster, a little bit faster. So, now once you've done that, now let's try and reclaim that range of motion. So now, after a couple weeks, now you're able to start kind of moving through that range of motion again with the injured arm. So now, people tend to complain about, especially with ankles, they're like, oh, I destroyed my ankle and then it healed again and now it's just never the same. It just won't do what it used to do. Well, typically it's because one, they were never doing anything that before the injury to strengthen it and make it more resilient and mobile. And then during the recovery process, they didn't listen to their PT and they didn't do any of the rehab exercises because it hurt too much. And then so when the ankle or the injured joint or muscle finally healed, it's all so tight because that's the only position that you ever trained it in was to just stay that way. So it's not going to try and get any better, right? So even if you can only move just ever so slightly, work through that range of motion. There's nothing wrong with it, because then if anything, you'll get stronger in that tiny range of motion, and then whenever you get to move on to more and more degrees, right, you're going to be strong, or you're going to be at least getting stronger throughout that whole range of motion, instead of just sitting there and just being like, well, you know, it's only this much, so it doesn't really matter that much. I'm going to wait until it's like, till I can move it all the way up and down. Well, by the time you can move it all the way up and down, it's too late. You should have started whenever your body was allowing you to be able to move through those tinier ranges of motion. So even if you can only do like maybe half squats, work on those half squats. You don't have to put like weight on the bar or anything, or crazy amounts. You can just do half body weight squats. It's the same thing with maybe an elbow or shoulder injury. Even if you can only do half of the motion, you should still train that range of motion, even if it's tiny. Again, it doesn't have to be super crazy, doesn't have to be a whole lot of weight, but you're not trying to re-injure yourself. You're trying to build yourself back up, try to build that base again. And then finally, once you have built that base up again, you might find that you are able to push even farther than you did before, because you actually really took the time with the lighter weights to ingrain technique, to ingrain your breathing, to ingrain like what it really felt to do those movement patterns, that now you can just blow past things that were hard before the injury, if that makes sense. Now, last thing is the sport. Typically, especially if it's a sport-related injury, we'll try to get back. Again, same thing, right? Try to reclaim that range of motion. Try to reclaim the sport. You can, if something happened, like maybe you injured yourself on a touchdown rise, and it's kind of like, and it feels weird to kind of maybe like bend your elbow. There are other exercises, or there's other tricks that you can do without having to bend your elbow so much. You can still train slower kicks. You can still train your basic kicks. You can still train some, probably twisting, some without having to pull super hard, or just even training gainers, right? Because again, the sport typically, we don't want to try and like push the sport before other things, because the sport's typically, again, right, made for performance, as opposed to being and pushing the body as hard as it can, as opposed to building longevity, which is what we're looking for. Now, from there, right, obviously build yourself up. If it's like messed up on a double cork, right, go gainer, cork, or gainer hook, cork round, cork shuriken, get all your variations. Make sure you're continuing to build your base, that you're still doing your training, right? And then bam, sooner, probably rather than later, you're going back to where you were before. Now, this isn't to say that you shouldn't take your rest times, right? That you maybe shouldn't take a week off of just working out in general, or having some kind of movement, right? Respond, or listen to your body, listen to what it's telling you. If it feels better, or like if it's better for you to have that rest week, take that rest week, kind of reset, refocus on what you need to do, what you need to think about, maybe a plan of action. Take that rest week. I will make a part 2 to this video talking about other methods of kind of injury recovery that doesn't have to necessarily deal so much with kind of like the physical side of it. Maybe talking maybe more about developing resiliency in your mind and not getting depressed, and other things that you can do to try and like really develop some mental fortitude. My name is David Rodriguez. I hope y'all learned something. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Hope y'all have a good day. Follow me, stomped.tricking on Instagram. Like, subscribe, and I hope y'all have a good day. Peace.